Welcome back. We're glad you returned. In this video, we will continue our understanding of these important end-time warnings from God. So without delay, let's explore the first angel's message. As time marches on for mankind, we marry and give in marriage, buy homes, socialize, and plan our futures just like it was in the last days of Noah. But since the beginning of the Christian faith, many errors and changes have occurred over time to the Christian religion. In Revelation 14, 6 through 12, God is giving mankind one final warning just before the return of Jesus, and this warning is called the three angels' messages. Through these three messages, God will expose the lies and deceptions that Satan will use to deceive the whole world in the last days. In case you were not aware of this, we are now living in the last days of Earth's history. What you will learn from these messages is that modern-day Christianity has apostatized from biblical truth. Apostasy is defined as an abandoning of what one has believed in as a faith, cause, or principles. Also see defection, desertion, disloyalty, and heresy. On an interesting side note, to show you the urgency of understanding and heeding these last three end-time messages, notice that in the same chapter of the three angels' messages, which is Revelation 14, Jesus is seen coming in the clouds with a sickle in his hand. In Revelation 14, 14 through 16, it reads, "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, 'Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe.' So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped." In other words, right after these three end-time messages have been played out in human history, the second coming of Jesus will occur. These messages are warnings that God's people must understand and you must heed. Do you remember the story of Cain and Abel in the book of Genesis? Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve. There was a time when Cain and Abel were giving an offering to God. In Genesis 4, it reads, "And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. God rejected Cain's offering, and because God did, Cain became jealous and angry of Abel, and rose up against him and killed his brother. Why did God reject Cain's offering? Was God being unfair or critical? No. God rejected Cain's offering because it was not what God had commanded him to give. Cain was offering God a sacrifice of convenience. In other words, Cain offered God what he felt God would accept, or rather what he felt God should accept, rather than what God had commanded. God always required a blood sacrifice as a form of worship, which reflected the future coming of Jesus the Messiah as a final sacrifice for the sins of the world. Notice that Cain and Abel were both worshipers of God. As it was in the days of Cain and Abel, it will be the same in the last days of time. There will be two groups of worshipers that will worship God. One group will worship God in the manner as Cain did, by convenience, or by what they feel God will accept, and even worship God with what they think God should accept. The other group will worship God as He commanded in His scriptures. This will bring about a similar controversy in the last days, like what was seen between Cain and Abel. Those who worship as Cain did will war against those who worship as God has commanded. This is how it will be in the last days. Mankind will offer God worship in a manner that God will reject. Now, I'm not referring to a blood sacrifice here, but rather a form of worship that God does not condone and will reject. We are now living in the last days, and if you need proof, please continue watching this video series. If you look closely through Revelation 14, 6-12, you will notice that the main controversy is about worship. Revelation spells out in chapter 14 that there will be two kinds of worship in the last days. Worship which God will accept, and another form of worship which the Antichrist beast power or the apostate harlot church will demand, but God will reject. In other words, it will be the first angel's message versus the third angel's message, but you'll learn about this as we go forward. We are getting closer to when God will close the door of entry into his kingdom. This is known in religious circles as the close of probation. In other words, mankind's last chance for salvation will end. God will decide that his mercy is no longer being accepted from him, and he will close the door of salvation for the whole human race. If one is not saved at this point, there will not be any more chances for salvation. After probation closes, God will pour out his wrath upon the earth through the last 7 plagues. Then the second coming of Jesus will occur. In Revelation 22:11, we see that the close of probation is proclaimed. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according to his work shall be. Probation is defined as the act of proving or proof. It's a trial, it's an examination period. Moral trial. It's a time of trial. Probation will end with the present life. So when you die, the life you lived is over and your probation has ended. Well, that's it for now. But as you can see, the 3 angels' messages are very important warnings that God wants his people to understand. Satan wants you and the human race to be deceived. These 3 messages expose how Satan will implement his final deception, which is now already in play. In video 3, we will dig deeper into the first angel's message, so be prepared to be challenged. Until we meet again, take care and may God bless you and yours, and as always, stay the course.